Okay, here's the video I promised, the third pivot point. And so we need to do a little bit of review because how do we retain God in our thinking to stay positive and move forward? And not only that, find ourselves empowered by God himself, because God can make us happen. He really can. We have to realize that God is happening right here, right now. Now, one of the biggest questions that we have on that, quite frankly, is, yeah, right, God's happening right here, right now. What proof do we really have that God's happening right here, right now? I mean, I look around me, I don't see anything. Okay? So the next question is, what would you find convincing? What would proof look like to you? And if you were convinced, okay, you gave me proof, I'm convinced, what would you change? Or would you change? I mean, there are a lot of skeptics out there that they're not going to change. They're just going to, okay, you gave me proof. I'm just going to go look for more arguments. Okay, what do you do with this? And that's just not fair. Okay? No. Their ideas have consequences. And so if an idea is true, you got to deal with the consequences. Or if you don't, you're in trouble. It's not really truth you want anymore at that point. And so what proof do we have that God is happening? Well, to do that, I want to ask another question. And the second question is this: does God control history? Now, you think, okay, we're dealing with the personal. God's happening right here, right now, right? So if God controls history, he not only controls the personal, but he controls the corporate. He not only controls the intimate, he controls the transcendent. That kind of a God, that powerful of a God, that big of a God, yeah, that could be proof. That could be proof that he's happening right here, right now, because obviously, if he can control history, he has to be happening. And so there's a couple more questions. If God controls the future, would that convince me? Because how are you going to control history if you don't control the future? You have to be able to control the future to be able to control history, because that's controlling history before it happens. And that's the role of biblical prophecy. The prophet in the Old Testament was to tell the future so that people knew that, oh, okay, well, if he knows the future, he can tell me what I need to do today. And that's what we do with all our prognosticators and all of those other guys, the analysts. They try to tell us what tomorrow's going to do. If God can tell us tomorrow, if he has a pretty convincing record of being able to control human history, I can trust the fact that he's right here, right now, and I need to listen to him. Okay? So, we're going to look at a Bible prophecy that is very intimate with Jesus and that first Palm Sunday, because it is actually the prediction of the first Palm Sunday. And I want to take a look at that because this prophecy, quite frankly, is amazing. Daniel, 600 years before Christ, or almost 600 years, right at 600 years, prophesied the day of Palm Sunday. You say, oh, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Question is, if I could demonstrate it, would you consider that proof that God controls history? That he can announce a day 600 years in advance? Yeah, I would think so, right? Right? Okay, so let's look at the prophecy. I'll read it. I'm going to start in Daniel 9. The prophecy is actually found in verse 25, but 24 through about 26 is what you need to read. But I'm going to start in verse 20. Now I was speaking and praying, confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and making my requests to the Lord my God for his holy hill. While I was still in prayer, Gabriel, the man I had seen in the earlier vision, came to me in swift flight about the time of the evening sacrifice. He instructed me and said to me, Daniel, I have now come to give you insight and understanding. As soon as you began to pray, an answer was given, and which I have been come to tell you, for you are highly esteemed. Therefore, consider the message and understand the vision. And here it is, verse 24. 70 weeks, 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in the everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. Okay, now that's crazy. 77s. Well, what's a 7? Well, a 7, when they were calculating long periods of years, a 7 would be 7 years. And so 7 sevens would be 49 years, or the time to the Jubilee. Or 77s would be 490 years. Well, that's the prophecy. In 490 years, the kingdom of heaven is going to reign on earth. The utopia we're all looking for, the government we've all wanted, is going to be here. I mean, that's what Daniel's been prophesying throughout the whole book, pretty much. I mean, it starts in chapter 2 and has big emphasis in chapter 7 and on to the end of the book. And you read that, you realize the whole focus of the book of Daniel is about the kingdom of heaven coming to earth. This is absolutely huge stuff. He's been given insider information. I mean, huge. 77s have been decreed. In other words, 490 years, the kingdom of heaven is going to be on earth. Verse 25, no one understand this. From the issuing of the decree to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem, in other words, gives a starting point of that 490-year period of time. From the issuing of the decree to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem until the Anointed One, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. 7, 62. That'd be 69. 7, 7, 60. Okay, so after 69 sevens, the king's going to show up. Until the Anointed One, the ruler, comes. There will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. Okay, so here we have, we've got 2 marking points. The first mark is the decree to rebuild Jerusalem. The second time mark is the king showing up. Obviously, in Jerusalem, where the decree was made to rebuild it. I'll keep reading. It will be rebuilt with streets and a trench, but in times of trouble. Now, the best edict that went out to rebuild Jerusalem, this would very accurately describe what was going on in Nehemiah's day. In fact, chapter 2, verse 1, when they rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem, and when Nehemiah was sent to Jerusalem to rebuild the city, and it was issued by a Persian king, they literally had to put half of their people on guard duty. And even the people that were rebuilded with their weapon right by them. It was during times of trouble, and it was to rebuild the city, because the city, no one was living there. And it was the last edict that was given to help restore Jerusalem. And without it, it probably would not have been restored. So no one understand this. From the issuing of the decree to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem until the Anointed One, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. It will be rebuilt with streets and a trench, but in times of trouble. After the 62 sevens, the Anointed One will be cut off and will have nothing. Okay. Beginning point, Nehemiah, rebuilding Jerusalem. Ending point after 69 weeks. Messiah shows up, gets cut off, and has nothing. Well, that's not real positive. I mean, that's a good way to get your kingdom started, by getting your king cut off. Wow, pretty crazy. Now, the difficulty of calculating this actual prophecy is that we're using a Gregorian calendar. But the calendar in Jesus' day was the Julian calendar. But the calendar of Daniel's day used the Persian calendar. And Daniel, being a Hebrew, also operated under the Hebrew calendar because they calculated the time of the issuing of the decree, the edict, Nehemiah, by the Hebrew calendar. And then the Bible has its own calendar. And none of these calendars agree with each other, except in one place. A day is a day. Now we know we have to focus on this one, the biblical calendar, because this is a prophecy that was recorded in the Bible. So we're going to use the biblical calendar to actually find out how many days that is. And then we can adjust those days to fit the Gregorian calendar, the one that we are living under. So let's do that. It takes a little bit of math, but we're going to do the math. Prophecy was made for 77s, or 490 years. The first 69 of them, the Messiah shows up. The Messiah is revealed. So you take 69 times 7 times 360, which is the biblical calendar, and you come up with a number that's 173,880 days. Okay, so you got that? From the issuing of the decree to rebuild Jerusalem until the king shows up and gets cut off is 173,880 days. Okay, the king is going to be revealed. The king's going to show up and get cut off and have nothing. Okay, so that's doing the math. Let's look at the calendar and determine the day. We have 173,880 days to deal with. That decree that was given to Nehemiah happened on March 5th, 444 BC. You add 173,880 days and you come up with a date, March 30th, 33 AD. Do you know when that day is? That's the first Palm Sunday. The king showed up at Jerusalem. They announced him as the king. In fact, the Pharisees were so upset and so nervous. Oh man, we got Romans looking over us. I mean, Jesus, tell your people to shut up. Well, if they don't cry out, the rocks are going to have to cry out, because this is the day. God's happening right here. Right now. Wow. You don't have to make God happen. He's happening. And what makes this pretty hard to argue with, so we have a copy of the book of Daniel that dates almost 170 years before this event. So somebody can't say, well, they made that up. No, not at all. So what's that third pivot point? It's time for me to get to that third pivot point. Okay? Nothing isn't nothing when you give it to the Lord. It just isn't. Nothing isn't nothing. If you go outside, I want you to do something. If it's night, I want you to, if you are like us, and we have the fortunate to be in a place where it's dark outside so we can see the stars. I want you to look at the stars. And I want you to just look at them for a while, because it takes a while to be able to see them for your eyes to adjust. Or if you're outside, everything around here is turning green. I mean, even the weeds look nice. The dandelions haven't gone to seed yet. I mean, everything is kind of popping up out of the ground, and it's just really nice outside. Everything's turning green, budding out. I want you to feel the air across your face. And if you're a place where you can get warm when the sun's shining on you, just sit in that porch swing and let the sun shine on you for a while. Okay? And I want you to just marvel at all there is and how big this is. Folks, This all came from nothing. You take your nothing and you put it in the hands of God. Nothing isn't nothing. Because everything was once nothing. See why you're unstoppable? If you have a God that makes you happen, do you see why you're unstoppable? Jesus had nothing. And now 1/3 of the world's population claims him as God. Nothing isn't nothing. So let's recap real quick. God is happening right here, right now. You're more lost than you know. So give him yourself. Follow him, trust him. And even if you think you have nothing to give, even if you think your life amounts to nothing, nothing isn't nothing when it's in the hand of God. Okay? Believe it. Believe it. Make it a pivot point in your mind and hold on to it because it gives you life. God bless.